1970s, Batavia native Pat Bergeson was beginning his musical journey, one that has led him to his current home in Nashville, where he's a successful guitarist and harmonica player, recording artist, and touring musician. A hometown hero, Pat returned in October 2017 to be inducted into the Batavia Public School District 101 Hall of Honor. During that visit, he sat down with Kevin Drindle to reminisce and catch us up on his career in Nashville and beyond.
I'm doing a lot of recording sessions, and I'm playing in various bands. Yeah, I'm playing in a duo with my wife Annie Selleck, and I'm playing in a band with a great soul singer named Charles Wig Walker. We do a weekend gig at the Acme Feed and Seed in downtown Nashville. And I've been playing in a band called Brers with some original members of the Allman Brothers, J-Mo and Butch Trucks, who recently passed away in January. I've been doing that the past couple of years, and that's been a lot of fun.
Along the way, Pat has impressed icons like Chet Atkins, who mentored Pat and later called on him for his musical expertise and collaboration. Interviewer Kevin Drindle delved into Pat's history to shed some light on how his musicianship evolved and caught up with several of Pat's childhood friends. Here's fellow musician and close friend Dan Anderson remembering how he met Pat in Batavia.
Yeah, Pat and I are both East Siders in Batavia, and interestingly enough, our fathers knew each other in high school. They were classmates, class of 52. So I met Pat in the 4th grade at the Louise White School, and that's the year you pick instruments and you get your recorder and decide what you want to play. We hit it off and became friends, and as things went with the music classes, he picked the drums, so he started the snare drum, and I started on the tuba. And we wanted to get together and play for fun over at his house after school. And it was impractical for me to bring the tuba over there. So I left it at school, had one at home. But I had a trumpet that my uncle had left at the old family house, and figured out how to play it good enough. So we'd get together after school, and we'd go down to the Colonial restaurant down there and get just ragged on coffee. And then go to his house and play duets before dinner for a couple hours. And we had a great time doing that. We just played tunes that came to mind, you know, military tunes or stuff we were playing in the band or pop songs of the day, and just work it out.
After high school, Pat and Dan were roommates at University of Illinois. Pat studied guitar in the music school where his focus was classical guitar, but after classes, he discovered the extracurricular jazz scene in Urbana. When Pat transferred to William Patterson University in New Jersey, the friends went their separate ways, but stayed in touch and reconnected on a project that Dan describes.
We had an idea, let's make a recording together. This was probably starting in the mid-90s. And so I went down to Nashville, so he met Chet Atkins in New York and was invited to get together with him in Nashville, and then he wound up moving there. So he had been down there for quite some years prior to this. And so I just took some time and spent a week down there, and this was with the tuba, and by that time he's playing harmonica. And I might add that he is one of the very few people who's really taken up the harmonica. The diatonic harmonica, I'm playing it chromatically.
Can you explain that?
I can briefly explain that, which means that he's taking an instrument that was not intended to be played in a way and playing it in that way, very convincingly. In other words, the diatonic harmonica, like, for example, would only have white keys, and he's playing it as if it had the blues. And there are a few great harmonica players that have done this, and he's one of them. So anyway, this recording project we started was pretty much started out as tuba, harmonica, and then he was playing guitar. And he had gained by that time quite a bit of studio experience in setting. So he was pretty fluent with the adding extra tracks, and we hired a guy who he did sessions with down there pretty frequently named Tom Brody, who has since passed away. And so we got, I don't know, maybe 7 or so of these basic tracks done. This album he put out called Hippie Dance, it features, some of the tracks have quite a few instruments and stuff. It really turned into a lot. But that basic chord stuff is still there.
Was the chord just you two?
Yes. The basic chord, but in some of these things he's orchestrated a lot of extra things on it. It sounds like a big band.
I mean, Dan, you went on, and you have had a music career as well. You made a career out of playing music. You played with, I think, about every major jazz band in Chicago and Chicago Symphony, and you've taught at multiple universities. And the two of you, both you and Pat, have gone on to really have prolific careers in music. And it started pretty humbly. And it started with you guys really enjoying playing music. It wasn't a task. It wasn't work. I mean, it was work, but you loved it. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's a good way of saying we shared a curiosity, and never turned down a. I mean, I can remember going on a weekend trip with him up to Wisconsin. Well, we were in high school, going to. It was kind of a little bit of a party weekend, and we made sure we had the guitar and the bass and the amps. I mean, we weren't going to go up there and just do nothing. So we took every opportunity that we had to play, and we just enjoyed it so much, and get so much satisfaction out of it. And it was that eternal quest, which I think both of us still are on. You're never really done. You never really learn it all. You just keep going, and it's really quite a joy.
Never underlearn.
That's right. True. That's very true. Lifelong endeavor, as I like.
When Pat was a high school sophomore, he was playing in a three-piece band, the Blues Agency, along with Bill Shumway and Kevin Doherty. Kevin introduced Gary Mizuki to Pat, and Gary started jamming with them occasionally. Here's what impressed him about Pat.
I look back, and after playing with Pat for a while, I don't think there was ever any doubt in his mind what he wanted to do, or what he wanted to be. I mean, the way he would progress, I mean, he turned out to be my inspiration. I would be playing with him, and I said, man, this guy's getting better and better. I got to go home and practice more, and that's what got me, really going.
Like Gary, Randy Quaip also played with Pat in their high school days. Pat and Bill Shumway invited him down to the Foundry in Batavia.
Dad goes, you want to play? He goes, the drum beat, the freeway jam, and thank God I did. And Dad starts playing, this Jeff Beck freeway jam, hit every note that we heard on the album, and some, So, and then we moved on, and just shortly after that, we practiced down at Bob's Blues Agency, or the News Agency, so we got called the Blues Agency.
Mike Sayers was Pat's band teacher during his younger years, and he remembers that Pat was very serious about the music even then.
The kids would switch instruments for each particular song we were rehearsing. So Pat didn't just play snare drum. He wound up playing some mallets. He wound up playing bass drum. Everybody had to take their turn at bass drum. All this kind of thing. So he got a pretty good exposure to all the percussion instruments that we had. Pat would play cymbals and take his turn at it. And I gotta say, my memory is that he didn't just slam them together for a crash. He played with some, dare I use the word, finesse. It wasn't how loud you make the crash, but, how you strike the two plates together, and then, to get the sound to go out from the back of the band to the front of the band. There's playing cymbals and there's playing cymbals. And he always played them well.
The aha moment came to Pat while he was a student at Waubonsee Community College. He realized with total clarity what it would take to become a professional musician.
After high school, I went to Waubonsee for a year. Went to Waubonsee College because I wanted to get into college for guitar. And I could have gotten in pretty much anywhere as a drummer because I was a decent reader on percussion, but I couldn't read on guitar, And so I went to Waubonsee for 1 year to try to get good enough to get into U of I. And I remember I had a teacher, a guy named Dave Gazzardo, and I don't know where he ended up, but he was the nicest guy, and I really liked him as a teacher. He was a real pivotal person in my life because when I was at Wabansie, taking guitar from him, I was studying classical guitar. And they didn't have like a jazz guitar or rock and roll guitar department. I was a decent rock and roll guitar player when I went to Wabansie, but you had to take classical. So I would practice for my lessons, and I'd go in and, I wasn't working hard enough. And eventually he said to me, you're really naturally talented, but you don't have any discipline. He said, you need to learn some discipline. And that was the light bulb that went off, where I thought to myself, that he is absolutely right. I really didn't have any discipline at the time. And so
you had always played guitar, you just picked it up and learned it.
It
wasn't like the drums where you had instruction and were...
Yeah, it was all by ear. Yeah, I just learned by ear. So I needed discipline. And I said, well, I want to get into U of I. I want to go to U of I. And he said, great, I'm going to help you get in there. And that was the coolest thing for him to do. He was very encouraging, which I thought was just great. So he got me he gave me the piece to learn, and we practiced it, and I did a recording, sent it into the school, and I got in. But it was because of him, because he was the guy who took me under his wing and said, you're going to do this, and in order to get from point A to point B, you need to practice, and you need to buckle down and really do your work.
A key factor in Pat's success was how he developed discipline for his practice.
When I got to U of I, I thought, wow, well, I'm starting to get somewhere on the guitar. After I was at Wabansie for a year, and I got there, and the first night I got there, I went out and heard this band play, and I was like, oh, jeez. That night, I went home and I practiced for 2 years, every night till 4 o'clock in the morning. And then when I transferred from U of I to go to William Patterson College in New Jersey, same thing. The day I got there, it was bang, another time I got knocked down into the dirt, where I was like, man, you're not even close to being where you should be. But at the same time, it was never like I got discouraged. It was like, okay, I can do this. I can practice enough to get there, and that's what it all came down to, is practicing. Nobody's naturally good enough to just be the greatest thing in the world without practicing. You have to practice all the time. And now at this period in my life, I need to practice. I always need to practice. The more time you spend with the guitar in your hand practicing and playing, the better you get. There's no two ways around it. There's no shortcut to anything.
That determination was core to Pat's musicianship, and his talent did not go unnoticed. Pat met Chet Atkins through singer-songwriter Robert Lee R.L. Castleman. R.L. gave Chet a demo of Pat on guitar, and so their friendship and collaboration began. Kevin Drendel asked Pat about that first meeting when Chet invited him to visit in Nashville.
Well, we hung out for a day, an afternoon, like playing guitars and passing the guitar back and forth, and show me this lick, and I'll show you that lick, and,
I mean, how cool is that?
It was amazing.
Chet Atkins.
Yeah, that was incredible. For me, that would have been enough, I mean, just to meet him and hang out with him and play guitar with him was incredible. And when he did this record with Jerry Reed, there was a lot of vocals on the record, and they decided they wanted to take some of the vocals off and have it be more instrumental. So they had these open places in the record where they needed something there. And Chet liked my style of guitar playing. And my style was very different than Chet's, and that was also why he liked what I did. It was that I did something that added a more modern element to his sound. And so he had me play some solos on this record. It's a record called Sneakin' Around, Jerry Reed and Chet Atkins Sneakin' Around. And that title cut, Sneakin' Around, is written by Robert Lee Castleman.
Okay.
And that was the demo he heard. That was,
okay.
He heard me on the demo of that song. So I ended up playing on that record, and from then on, he was doing TV appearances and stuff for the record, and had me come along. And at that time, he happened to come to New York 2 times. We played the Bottom Line, and they videotaped that. I think you can find that on YouTube. And we played at Carnegie Hall with the New York Pops. And I was kind of a featured guy, which was incredible because I, never played Carnegie Hall, and I was just some guitar player trying to make a living in New York, and all of a sudden I'm playing at Carnegie Hall with Chet Atkins, which was really amazing. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it.
Pat got a standing ovation at that Carnegie Hall performance for his harmonica solo. Not long after, he left New York and moved to Nashville.
Well, it was 1992, I think, beginning of 92 or end of 91 when I first did the record with Chet and Jerry. And a whole year went by. I was living in Brooklyn, New York. And I was renting an apartment there and starving. And Chet would drop hints to me every now and then and say, "Oh, boy, you ought to move to Nashville. Probably do well here." And I just would say, "Yeah, okay." I just didn't picture myself there yet. And then at one point it just dawned on me that I need to go there. And so I did. And the day I got to Nashville, Chet picked me up, took me over to the Nashville Musicians Union and paid my way into the union and told me that, well, if you're going to be working with me, you have to be in the union.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so that's how it happened. And from then on, I worked with him. It was off and on. We would do 20, 30 shows a year. He was a very great, nurturing guy. He just helped me in so many ways. Took me under his wing and, would sit at his house on Sundays, go over there and just hang out with him all day. And he'd play me records of guitar players that he liked and turn me on to like all this great music. And, we'd sit there and he would fidget on his table with guitar pickups and putting guitar pickups in his guitar and, and showing me how he would solder things and, and we would record. I mean, I did 3 records with him. We did a record that Sneaking Around with Jerry Reed, and I did Read My Licks was a record that he actually featured me on the record. And there was one we did with Suzy Bogguss called Simpatico. So there was a lot of times when I was just going over to his studio to record with him. And I'd go over there early in the morning. We'd spend a few hours recording, and he'd take me to lunch, and we'd hang out. I mean, he just became a real good friend.
When asked for his advice for budding musicians, Pat breaks his answer down between those who are interested in music as a hobby and those aspiring to have a musical career.
The answer for the person who wanted to be the hobbyist at music would be to just have fun with it. Have fun with it. Like, I encourage any kids, I think all kids should take up an instrument. All kids should try it. And they should be encouraged in a way to where they learn how to love it for just what it is. Forget about the TV shows, The Voice and all those TV shows. Like, that's not where you're supposed to end up playing music. The playing music is just for the point of playing music, not for being a star or, if you're doing it for that reason, I wouldn't do it personally. I wouldn't do it for that reason. I mean, if you're a kid and you're going to learn how to play music, do it just because you love doing it, and then you'll see what's going to happen. If you're 5 years into it and you're still doing it and you find that all you want to do is practice and you can't wait to play your guitar, you can't wait to play the piano or whatever, then you're on the right track. If you're doing it because you have a natural talent for it, and you just got to do it for that reason. But you don't even have to have a natural talent for it. If you love doing it, that's why you should do it. But if they got to that point now and they wanted to be a professional, the answer would be that you have to practice all the time. The more you practice, the more that comes to you, the more knowledge you get, and it just feeds on itself, and it just keeps coming at you the more you practice. And if you want to do it as a professional, learn more than one instrument. Nowadays, it's a different world now than it was for me coming up. You know, nowadays kids have to be more creative in certain ways, like in order to monetize or to make money playing music, you have to be creative in a different way than there were a lot of systems in place for me a while back, you know, with there were record labels and you know, you could make royalties and on things, and that's not like it used to be. There's much less of that now. So you have to be more creative. You know, the money now is in touring, you know, putting a band together. If you want to be a professional musician, get in a band, put together a band, or learn how to be a great solo artist, you know, like Tommy Emmanuel is.
Pat has achieved notable success across many musical genres, in studio as a session player and recording artist, and on stage performing and touring with artists like the Allman Brothers Alumni Band, Brers, Tommy Emmanuel, and his wife and fellow musician, Annie Selick. His virtuosity emanates from his passion.
Troubles